GCFO Anoj Singh and former GCEO Molefe misrepresented facts to justify getting a loan facility from the China Development Bank. She alleges that Singh and Molefe relied on Regiments Capital's flawed pricing, which would have resulted in capital losses amounting to 3.7 billion rand. Makgatho also reiterated that Regiment services were not needed, this as their pricing was not market-related.
Misrepresentation.
Well, for more on this story, we cross to my colleague Mathane Makgatho, who's standing by for us at the State Capture Inquiry. Mbali, a lot of damning testimony there today. Just give us a brief.
Good afternoon, Nompu. What Magkate said today really ties in with what Dr. Molefe, who is the board chairperson, said when he appeared earlier here before the commission. He talked about how the board had been misinformed and how facts were misrepresented in order for certain transactions to be approved. And basically what she said as she was concluding her testimony before this commission, basically speaks to that, and she talked about how certain facts were misrepresented in the interest of getting a loan facility from the China Development Bank. Now, she explained that some of the facts she explained that this information made it to a pack that was sent through to the board, and that some of the calculations that were made by Regiments Capital were rather not market related. And she said that they were too expensive and they were too high, and Transnet would have ended up losing somewhere around 3.7 billion rand. She also explained to the commission her reasons for resigning. And she said that then Group CFO Anoj Singh had created a very toxic environment for her, and she felt that she was not safe, she was not physically safe, and she feared for her life. And she said that it even went as far as affecting her health. And she had believed that there were other elements that were involved in this transaction, and she felt that the transaction was going to go ahead with or without her approval. Now, she had raised a number of disagreements relating to this transaction. However, these disagreements were rather dismissed, and she explains that during a meeting that was convened by then Group CEO Molefe, she was told that her calculations, she's the only one who believes that the calculations that were presented by Regiments Capital were not market related, and that she's the only one who believes that they could get a cheaper rate elsewhere, and that the calculations and the pricing strategy that was put in place by Regiments Capital was the best one. And she basically felt that she saw that there were also Taiwanese mafia involved in this agreement. She says there was a certain individual from Taiwan who happened to be involved in all of the meetings relating to this loan facility from the China Development Bank. And she said that she continued feeling as though her movements were being monitored. Even after she had resigned, she felt as though her phone had been tapped and so on. So that's how she concluded her testimony today before the commission, just explaining the toxic environment and how Molefe had done nothing with regards to, resolving the impasse that existed between herself and then Group CFO Anoj Singh. The next witness is a Mr. Mazibuko from the South African Reserve Bank, and from what we hear from the evidence leader is that his testimony will tie into what Ian Sinton from Standard Bank had testified before this commission, where he said that he basically explained to the commission that they had noted with concern a number of transactions and large amounts of money that were going into Gupta-linked companies, including Regiments Capital and Homex, and how these amounts of money were also just leaving those accounts within a matter of days. And basically, he had raised concerns about these transactions possibly being proof of money laundering, and this is what Mr. Mazibuko will be testifying to before this commission after the break. But for now, Nompu, it's back to you in studio.
Thanks very much for that report. Mathane Makgatho, my colleague there at the State Capture Inquiry.